doing well. Thank you for having me.
I am very excited you're here. You've been here before, and it's
Yes.
really lovely to have you back. And wanted to grill you a little bit on your spirituality and your mission in life, really. I
Yeah.
think listeners will be interested, especially where the show is going this year. So, if you could just introduce yourself and what your
Yeah.
mission is, because I think it's really clear on your stuff, but it'd be nice to hear it in your words.
Yeah. Well, I'm Michael Galyon. I'm a mindfulness-based life coach. So I work a lot with clients, and I work a lot in social media. So I have, that's kind of where a lot of this started.
Mm.
So back in 2020, when the world exploded, I moved from being in the corporate world and working in international franchising, where I was working with franchise owners around the world and coaching them. But um, the company that I was working for went bankrupt. And it was at that moment where I just decided, let's just go out on a limb, take the two things that I love more than anything, which are meditation and mindfulness and coaching, and see if I can start something. And so that kind of moved into creating just these little snippets on social media using TikTok at the time, back when
Yeah, I
it
remember.
was a dancing app for children.
I
and
remember. I
and
remember
kind of
seeing
figuring out, yeah, figuring out, and those were back in the days where no one spoke and it was just pointing at things.
Yeah.
And just started, a lot of it was just to put myself out there and to kind of just show up for myself. And so I was really just sharing messages that I needed to hear at that moment. And it caught on and people started enjoying it. And then, when things kind of shifted and it was like, oh, we need to speak on social media, uh, that's where I started speaking and people kind of got very drawn into the voice, and it just kind of grew and grew and grew from there, which just allowed for a whole slew of things to kind of come into my life.
Yeah.
So, at the core of everything that I do is really the mission to create a calmer, a kinder, and a more connected world.
Okay. So I've got a few things to ask. I mean, I remember seeing you when you
Yeah.
first started on TikTok and Instagram. I was kind of doing the
Yeah.
same, and I actually did some dancing. It was really bad, and
You did.
pointing.
I never danced. I never
I,
danced.
I did dance to one anxiety song. I wouldn't even go there. Let's not traumatize each other with that. But
I love it.
what if you ever look at, obviously you work in the corporate world, what led you to, explore mindfulness and meditation? Obviously that was something that was of a big interest and it's turned into your career. But what
Yeah.
started that?
I was dealing with extreme panic attacks to the point where, almost going to the hospital, couldn't breathe.
Mm.
Um, Before being in the corporate world, I actually did musical theater. So I was a singer and
Right.
would, I did it since I was 10 years old and then graduated and moved to New York and was performing in New York and performing internationally. And then as I started progressing in my career, I just started having incredible anxiety. And so much so to the point where I really couldn't be on stage anymore. I remember being on stage
Right.
in a huge hall in China and Beijing and just feeling like my heart was going to, like I thought I was going to die. And I didn't understand what was going on. I didn't, and so I kind of started searching for anything that could help me because it really was taking my career away. I couldn't audition, I couldn't perform.
Mm.
And so I started looking for whatever was going to help me and tried a whole lot of things, tried a whole lot of, different spiritual practices. And the one that really stuck was the simplicity of mindfulness. It was really the mindfulness and the meditation that came from there that was able to bring me back to the present moment when
Mm.
I was just continually in this anxious spiral. And so it just allowed for me to really come back, kind of assess what I really wanted to do with my life. And it wasn't perform. I think that was, really a reaction to being really loving something, but not wanting it to be your career. And it allowed for me to really get clear on what I wanted to do. And at that point, it was teaching. I wanted to teach. And so I started teaching preschool and started working with 3 and 4 year olds and being in that environment and just learning how to take all of these really complex subjects and just bring them down into digestible little bite-sized pieces for little minds to understand. And I learned so much from that, that when I moved into the management side of things and started managing the preschools that I was working at, I still kept that way of teaching, where it was just to, how can I synthesize this to the most understandable level of simplicity? And that's how I managed and then continue to grow. And then when I built my business and started coaching, that's really what stuck, was that I would, continue to teach at that basic level. And that's really what mindfulness is about too, is about how do we take things back to this simplicity of here and now and just have a full understanding of this moment and the simplicity of it.
I love
So
that.
that's kind of
Yeah,
how I got here.
I love that. Did you ever go back to the panic attacks for a moment? Did you ever find the root cause of that, or was it something like a variety of things compounding at the time? And obviously you were performing, and there was obviously maybe an inner drive to be doing something else. But did you ever find out what was going on?
Yeah, I think it was quite a few things. I think it was being attached to a career that I really wasn't invested in. That I think I was very good at it. It's what I always had done. It's what other people wanted me to do. It was, most actors are like, my parents told me to go to law school. My parents were very invested in me being in the field, and it was heartbreaking for them when I left. And so I think it was a lot of expectation. It was also, I'm inherently a very shy introvert. And so having to
Really?
show up at that level
Yeah,
was it was exhausting
yeah,
and
I can
causing a lot of that. Yeah. And I think the other thing was, I didn't quite know how to deal with it. And so I was using alcohol as a way to manage it, which was
yeah,
just making it worse,
of
you know.
course. Of course. And how did mindfulness help you? Obviously, it brings the simplicity back to it. I get that, but and we've had very similar journeys. It was panic attacks that led me to do everything that I do, when it was being caused
Yeah.
by quite a lot of different things in different areas. But how did mindfulness help you? Because I didn't understand it first of all. When people were telling me about mindfulness and they said your thoughts are not real and they're not reality, I was just like, what? What do you mean are not my thoughts, not me? Or I couldn't quite separate myself, and it took a while for it to begin to
Yeah.
sink in. But how did it help you?
Yeah. I mean, when I first started mindfulness, I remember thinking, like, this is so cheesy. Like, this is
Yeah,
nonsense jargon that's being put on LinkedIn, annoying posts. And it wasn't until I experienced it and I started feeling the efficacy of it that I got it. Um, I'm the kind of person, like, you can tell me every study that's ever been created for something, and there are lots and lots of studies on the benefits
yeah,
of
yeah.
mindfulness, but until I physically experience it, and I'm not going to believe you. And so I think that's what it was, where, I remember I was just taking classes at this like yoga studio in Queens in New York. And I was sitting there and I just remember it was a really anxious day. I was on the subway and having like anxiety attacks while I'm on the train. And I get there and she has us go through just a traditional body scan where we're just going from head to toe. And I just remember feeling this release of, for the first time in months, just being present. And I remember just asking her afterwards, I was like, what just happened? She was like, that's called present awareness. That's you coming into the moment, and your mind stopped thinking about what could happen or what did happen, and you were just here. And that's how I think mindfulness has impacted me, that way of just being able to stop the mind from taking me to places that it didn't need to be.
I love that. I love that. And then, so your panic attacks began to die down, and life got easier for you.
They they did. They did. They were, and they still even to this day, like, there are moments, I think, especially like as things with my career progress and things get on a larger stage, in a lot of ways it's like I'm back on stage,
Yeah,
and so they are there. The difference is I feel like I have an understanding of what home feels like. I have an understanding of what it feels
Mm,
like to be centered, an understanding of what it feels like to be at home in my body, which means that I have an understanding of when I'm not there.
yeah.
And there's no judgment of that. It's just going to happen. We're going to vacillate. We're going to have moments where, you know, life gets in the way and we start to get carried away with our thoughts and
Mm.
our body starts to react to those thoughts. And it's just having that awareness of, oh, I need to come back. And then I have the tools to come back home.
It is incredibly practical. What's your favorite tool? What's your favorite part of mindfulness that do you think, or practice that brings you back to the present moment, almost like effortlessly?
Yeah. My favorite is just connecting with the breath.
Mm,
And it's the simplicity of your breath can't be anywhere but right here. It can't be in the future. It can't be in the past. It is always present. And so it's just that like built-in present making machine to be able to come back. And so I have, I call it the 4 point breath where I draw the attention and awareness to the inhale and exhale through the nostrils, then through the mouth, then into the chest, then into the belly.
oh,
And
nice.
it's just bringing awareness to those parts just really allows for me to come back to center.
Yeah, and obviously we're aware of how how helpful it can be for people. When you're teaching, what resistance do you find that comes up against mindfulness, or things that you struggled with? What is it that people find hard about it?
Inevitably, every class, at least one person is going to say, I'm not good at meditation or I can't meditate.
Mm,
My mind is always thinking. And I would say that's the point. Your mind is going to continue to think.
mm,
And if you can shift your thinking from, in order for me to be in a meditative state, I need to have an absence of thought, to, in order to meditate, I need to have an awareness of thought so that I can make the conscious choice to redirect to something in the present. And so a lot of people, especially people who are neurodivergent, may have very active minds.
mm.
It's more opportunity for you to actually start to just be aware of when the mind is wandering, have that, ability to step back and then say, okay, I hear that thought. Instead of allowing for my actions to be dictated by that thought, I'm going to redirect to the breath, to the body, to right here. I'm going to use my senses to look around. And in doing so, the thought drops.
It does. It does. I think it's such an
Yeah.
important practice, and but you do get this resistance, and some people don't really know what being in a now means, and what do you mean my thoughts are not reality, like I experienced.
Yeah.
Um, and some people,
Yeah.
who are neurodivergent, really do struggle to focus, and they think that it
Yeah.
means that they can't do it then.
Yeah. And a big part of mindfulness is also non judgment.
Mm,
It's the ability to remove judgment from how you're experiencing life. There's nothing inherently wrong about your mind wandering. It's just, is that leading you to where you ultimately want to be?
mm. I love
And
that.
if it's not, then you can create to continue to develop those tools that just get you a little bit closer. And everything is, it's your experience. And so it doesn't need to be, you do not need to be a monk sitting on a
No,
mountaintop in order to be present.
no, you don't. But I loved something that you just said. It leads you back to where you really want to be. How does someone find out where they really want to be?
I always say if you don't know where you want to be, think about what is one step away from where you don't want to be.
Mm,
We can all figure out it's hard to identify with what we actually want in our lives, but we all know what we don't want. We're
very true.
very attuned to figuring out the things that we are resistant to, that we do not want in our lives. And just taking a step away from that and saying, okay, I'm going to move in this direction starts to lead you towards that. And when you start to kind of eradicate those things that you don't want in your life, you start to be surrounded by the things that you do want.
Brings me quite nicely then to what you want and your mission for a calmer, more more compassionate world. Why is that
Yeah.
so important to you?
I have experienced what it's like to live in the absence of calm, in
Mm,
chaos. I've experienced what it is like to be in a space where kindness is not present. I've experienced what it's like to be unkind to myself, to be unkind to others, to have others be unkind to me.
mm,
And I've experienced what it feels like to be disconnected from the world. And I think in a lot of ways, we inevitably become the people that we needed when we were children.
yeah.
And I think ultimately I needed someone who was teaching me how to find calm, how to be kinder to myself, to be kind to me,
Mm,
and to teach me how to just be connected to myself and to the world around me. And so that's kind of what I needed. And then I think it's our mission when we find that to pass it on and to create
mm.
that within the world around us.
Well, that's a bit I'm interested in because you could just, you could just do it for yourself and then trot off to your 9 to 5, but you didn't.
Yeah.
You decided to go on TikTok and just point at things for a little bit. And then, you've
Yeah.
grown to where you are, and you've got your beautiful podcast now, Let It Settle. And a
Yeah.
book coming out later on this year. So there's lots of different things going on for you. But
Yeah.
again, it's points at this mission, doesn't it? What is it that you want? Why is it so? Why I know that you experienced all of this for yourself, and it's really lovely that you want other people to experience, what you can help them with, and so they can experience the calm and the peace and the kindness that you do. But why is it so important to do it on such a grand scale? What's going on underneath the hood? Do you think that's driving this to
Yeah.
create such a big
I
ripple
think,
in this pond?
yeah. I don't think that was intentional.
Mm,
I think, in fact, I was very resistant to it needing to be as large as it has become.
mm,
Um, and I think a lot of that was ego. A lot of that was the fear of what happens if I am perceived on a larger scale. And so I really was holding myself back a lot. And I think the difference was when I started taking it away from this being about myself and this being about other people. I
mm,
think when the pandemic happened, I really got an insight into people's the situation that most people are dealing with. There's a lot of sadness in the world. There's a lot of disconnection in the world,
mm.
and there's just a lot of unkindness in the world. And I think I realized that if I was given a platform of whatever size it was selfish of me not to use it in a way that was going to be of service to the world. And so that's really what I think that's, the mission at its heart is just how can I be of service to the world? And a lot of it is about just taking myself out of the equation. I always talk about letting things come through you, not from you. And when
Yeah,
you can get really centered and just really open, it's not, I'm really not saying anything new. I'm not saying anything that is, this like new age, I have created this. I'm
mm.
just allowing for things to come through me, and however they resonate with people, it's going to resonate. And it
I
seems
think,
to be
yeah.
hopefully creating some good.
What it is, we know that your videos are watched by millions of people, you know, and I love how the calm and the presence and the stillness, the way that you check in on people. I think that really resonates with what they're not getting in their lives on a day-to-day basis. Because
Yeah,
even though we live in such a socially, well, apparently socially connected world, people are lonelier than ever. And there's something that resonates
totally.
with,
I think,
someone just going, "Hi, are you, hi, how are you today?" And the way
yeah,
that you do it in your style.
yeah, yeah. I think that was not intentional, but I think I said it in one video. I just said, hi, just checking in, seeing how you're doing today.
Yeah.
And the reaction of people who just realized how much they just want someone to check in on them.
Yeah.
And then for someone to say, I'll see you tomorrow. I think that that promise of you can always come back here. And while I can't physically post every single day, but there's
Yeah.
always that understanding that, there's a there at this point I think thousands of videos that they could watch. They can
Mm.
always come back to that person who's just going to check in on them.
I think it is. Your work is impacting. And you would never have predicted it. I guess that it would ever get to this far. Do you think there's like a larger plan for this? Where's this going really for you? I mean, do you have like I'd love this to happen in my future?
There's always dreams. Actually, I
Yeah.
need to start dreaming bigger
Yeah.
because what's interesting is I did a program with Seth Godin called the Alt MBA,
Oh
and
yeah.
I did that about 8 years ago. And I found my notes from it, and in my notes, it one of the final things that we had to do is create what are our dreams? What are we actually like creating here? And then put the steps of like, here's how we can create what we want. And so my like 8 years ago, before any of this was even like a thought that could happen, I wrote down, you know, this is what I want. I want to be reaching, hundreds of thousands of people, and I want to be able to share this with people. And here's how I'm going to do it. And it was I'm going to create a social media presence that's going to have, I think I said 300,000
Yeah.
followers.
Okay.
And then I'm going to create a podcast which is going to reach this amount of people. And then I'm going to write a book. And and like
Yeah. Yeah.
slowly everything has really come to be. And so now I'm at a point where I'm like, oh, I need to dream bigger now. So,
Well, what do you think that
I
dream is?
think ultimately, yeah, I mean, I think maybe it's about declaring it in the world right now. But I do
Yeah.
think like there's media is such a powerful format. And I think having a television show of some sort, whether it's, through a YouTube series or whether it's a network show or Netflix or something,
Yeah.
but just having, I think the world needs kind of a modern Mr. Rogers for adults.
I I
Although I don't know if you had that in England,
I have
but
heard of it. So I know I have it,
um,
but to explain, because
yes,
there are a lot of listeners in different countries. But so Mr.
yeah,
Rogers is.
yeah. Mr. Rogers was this just one of a kind, unique American who had a show for children, and it was called Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. And every day he would come in and he would greet you, and it was the same simple beginning where he would just talk to you as if you were his neighbor. And then he would take you through different things, but he stood for kindness and acceptance and wasn't afraid to, talk about really heavy things with, his audience of children. But it's just, he created this movement of just people who were impacted by him for their entire life. And so, I think that's kind of, it's needed
Yeah.
in media to just have that calm, consistent presence.
Well,
And so,
it's an alternate voice,
yeah,
isn't it? It's because there's a lot of, when my stepson's here, I get to see what they're watching on TV and on YouTube and stuff like that. And it's a lot, it's very loud and very,
yeah,
a lot going on. And I think having an alternate common presence that people can just begin to, maybe, because it's the experience, isn't it? If we feel good looking at content, we want more of it, and I think that's what your channels do. But were
yeah.
you influenced, do you think, by Mr. Rogers in regards to, because you've been drawn to that, the greeting and the message?
I would say subconsciously,
Yeah.
yes. I don't think it was not an intentional thing,
Yeah.
but I do recognize that. And when people comment that, it's such an honor to be, compared to him because it really was,
Yeah.
you know, I think we have similar missions in the world.
I think that's it's quite a big that's a big dream to go for, and good luck with that. Because it'd be good to
Thanks.
make it happen, and there's no reason why it couldn't. because
Yeah.
again, it's I
Yeah.
think Netflix would do very well from having you on there, and just inviting people just to relax and just connect with themselves.
Yeah. And just to have it be, something that they can come back to when they need.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what everything that I put out there. It's, it should be when you need this. I'm a
Mm,
big proponent of not having these strict, hard rituals that you have to adhere to every day,
mm.
but more so that you just have things that you can come back to when the need is present.
Yeah, it's
And
good
that's what I
advice.
try and be.
Yeah, that's really good advice. Tell me about spiritual Michael. What's your belief
Spiritual,
systems
yeah.
like? Yeah, because I'm intrigued because we were talking just before
This
we
is,
came online about where you were and stuff like that, and you've had some obviously had some experiences. So it'd be good to find out about more what influences your mind and your type of work, where you come from on it.
yeah. So I grew up in a very religious Christian household,
Oh, right, okay.
and it had a big impact on me. It was, I think the center of our family time was really around church. It was going to church. My parents held Bible study in the middle of the week. We had prayer time before bed. Um, and so in many ways, I'm really grateful that I had a spiritual connection so present in our lives
Mm,
um, at such an early age. And I went, and I think even more than the spirituality, it introduced me to music as a way of connecting spiritually. I was in a, you know, we called it the Promised Land Band. It was a, children's band
wow.
at
Okay.
church.
Okay.
But it just allowed for me to understand the power of music. And that's a big
Mm,
part of my work as well and that's, why I went into music in the first place. And I think that came from understanding the spirituality of that can be connected to music and how it can move you
mm,
and how it can allow for you to connect to something. As I've grown, I think I've had a million different avenues of, loving Christianity, hating Christianity, wanting nothing to do with it, coming back to
mm,
it. Um, but I think at its core, there's always been a spiritual connection to something beyond me. And whether you want to call that God, whether you want to call that,
mm,
source, whatever it is, it was more so about connecting to something that is beyond me so that I don't have to have all the pressure on me. As I was talking about
mm.
before, how do I remove myself from the equation and just allow for things to flow through me? I think that's the connection that I have to spirituality
Yeah.
is this understanding that there is certainly something bigger than me. I don't know what that is. I may never know what that is, but I'm okay with that. I'm okay with just being still and allowing for things to just to be.
And have you, from just being this open spiritually, have you had experiences that give you an insight that there is something out there for you, that you're connected to?
Yeah, I mean, I think music has always been that. And I
Mm,
think there definitely was, and I've really spiritual experiences with different moments of my life where I was performing. I remember being in high school in it was called all state choir. So it's like, all of the high schools in the area like send their, top singers and then you come together and you create a choir. And just having this moment where we were singing on the balcony of this hotel in a round, and it was really a spiritual experience to just be in the presence of people from all around coming together and connecting and creating that. A lot of spiritual experiences in nature of just being. I grew up in Colorado, and so just being in the mountains and experiencing
right.
that and like seeing the stars, it's just the
Mm,
vastness of the world and understanding how small we are,
yeah.
but also how important we are.
No,
So I think, yeah, it's been a lot of different moments where it's just that continued reminder of coming back to I'm not alone,
Mm.
and I don't have to do this all on my own.
I love the simplicity around that. Did you ever explore the, the new age spirituality side of things and get drawn into various, because
A
there's a lot of
little,
belief systems out there. It can get quite wild.
yes, yes, a little bit. I think I've explored things. I think I'm just a very simple. I maybe it's I just break things down so
Yeah.
simply that I never have felt the need for all of that.
Yeah.
Like I've never felt the need to have the right crystal formations in front of me. I've never felt the need to have even like the right doctrine or the right, dogma in front of me. It's that all just felt like tools that were helpful, but I didn't need them.
Mm. It's interesting, isn't it? What sort of comes your way? What do you think? Looking at your work, it looks kind of spiritual. Do people have assumptions about what you are about, and then are quite surprised? Do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think part of part of what I do is also just trying to not insert
Mm.
myself into the equation as much. It's I don't want to make it about me. I don't want to make it about my life and my experiences are shared as a way to relate with people.
Yeah.
But I try. Sorry, there's a okay. I don't know if you could hear that. There was
No.
a fire truck outside. Um. Anyway,
Yeah.
so yeah, I try not to insert myself into it as much, and so people can take away what they want to, and they can take away what they need to. So I don't think I mean I'm sure there are things that people would surprise people about me, but I don't know if that matters.
What would be one thing that would what don't people know about you, Michael, that you think, well, actually, I could share this?
Let's think.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I think there's like a silly geeky side of me that, I think people associate me with just this, very very calming presence
Mm.
who's just there and always present. And there's times when it's, I do have a range of emotions where I do have moments where I am incredibly goofy with my friends and family, and there's times when I do get angry. There's times when it would probably surprise people that I do yell in traffic. That
Are you a road rager?
that I will, I can I can be.
That way, your way of
But yeah, that
venting.
would probably surprise people.
I can imagine
Yeah.
it. Just a big fan of Michael Galyon, and then you can see you shouting from your car. That's a really calm guy. That's the guy that I follow on. I think people.
That
I
does
would be
temper me
surprised
that
by
at
that.
times there are times when I'm like, oh, I need to maybe be careful of that.
Well, that would make a
But
great
it's
TikTok
also
video.
it's a normal human reaction. We all get angry. And
Absolutely.
so,
Absolutely. And actually talking about you mentioned earlier about, there are people being unkind, the world's unkind, and there's a lot of, well, basically alluding to there's a lot of suffering in the world. And it's wonderful
yeah.
what you're doing in regards to helping people with that. We're both on that mission, a similar mission to have an impact. But why do you think there's so much suffering? What is, you work with a lot of people, you coach. What do you think people struggle with the most that leads them to being that unkind to themselves and other people?
Yeah. There's a disconnection from people. There's a lot of loneliness. And I think it's this very, very odd situation where we are incredibly disconnected from each other, but also so connected to the point where there is a comparison that happens to other
Mm.
people. Social media can be a beautiful thing of connection, or it can be a connection that allows for you to set a bar for yourself, which is unattainable and fake. You know, there's there are very few things on the internet that are real. And when you don't understand that, when you don't have that, it sets you up to feel like there's an expectation of you. And so I think because we have these unrealistic expectations that we put on ourselves, we, if we're not careful, can also put those on others.
Mm.
And so it just becomes this really vicious cycle of, not feeling that you are enough, but feeling that you have to be enough. And so you have to put others down in order for you to feel enough. And I think the world would be well served with people just realizing that without changing a thing about themselves, they're enough. They don't have to be anything but who they are. And it would allow for them to accept themselves and allow for them to accept other people as well.
Yeah, how do you?
And I don't think that happens enough.
No, I mean, especially, I mean, we're witnessing quite a lot of turbulence in the States right now. I know we have in our own countries and things like
Yeah.
that, but it seems very divisive in regards to politics right now. In States, what's your view of
Yeah.
that? How does that look to you when, I know you're adding your element of peace to that, but how does it look to you to see this almost even more divisive than ever, isn't it? Or is that just a perception, or has it always been like that in the States, but we're seeing it on a more magnified level?
I think it's being magnified. I
Mm.
think there's a lot of fear being pumped out on all sides. There's
Mm.
no side that is not, it's, and that's how you're winning an election, is by how can I tell the people who are most aligned with me that the other side is going to do something that's going to either harm them or create difficulty in their life or harm people that they love.
Mm.
It's a manipulation of people's kindness to a degree that causes hate. And that's the problem with politics. And
Yeah,
so I do think that there has always been a division
yeah,
because people are going to have different beliefs. And I think that's okay. I think that's how we learn, that's how we grow, is by having different beliefs. But it's when fear is put in there, and it's the fear to the degree of, if I don't align with this side, the other side is going to take away my rights, take away who I am as a person, cause, damage to the world. That's when you stop listening. And that's dangerous.
yeah. What would, because there's a real them versus us sort of mentality, which doesn't tend to bode well, does it? What would your answer be? What would you like to see happen? I know obviously people, if them not to do it would be an answer, but what do you think a solution could be for people to begin to readdress their sort of attitude towards them versus us?
I think developing empathy and understanding of other people's is the key to all of this. To be able to say, I can look at two different people. And so, in the States, if we were to say like one is a Trump supporter, one is a Biden supporter, you can very easily look and say, yeah, you believe something that I myself would personally never believe, or that I could not imagine myself. And that's really no empathy, is not putting yourself in someone else's shoes and viewing the world as you would view it.
Mm.
It's putting yourself in their shoes and viewing the world as they would view it. And so in order to do that, you really have to have an understanding of what shaped their worldview, what could have potentially
Mm.
cause them to believe this. Because if they're holding, most people don't hold beliefs just because they want to be bad people. They hold beliefs because it's something that's meaningful and important to them. And so being able to empathize with someone to that degree, to say, okay, I may not agree with you, but I totally understand why you believe that. Can I share with you why I believe this? And at least if you can have empathy and understanding for each other, it doesn't become, you're not so pitted against each other,
Yeah,
because you have a clear understanding of why they're making the choices.
that's such wise words. It is so important. Why do you think we struggle to have empathy for people we class as, you know, different to us, having different beliefs? I mean, I think it's gone throughout history, isn't it? Look at our
Yeah.
evolution. Different tribes and different races. Even a gender, everything, sexuality.
Yeah.
It's them versus us. They're different to me, so therefore, I have to create this wall and anger and hate, which, yeah, what do you think? Why do you think we find it so difficult in general?
I think there can be a very isolated view of how the world works.
Mm.
And I think we create these systems that are, in order for life to work and keep me comfortable, everything has to be like this. And when you have multiple sects of people who have multiple different views of how the world should work, it creates this world where it's not only seen as, oh, you're living life differently than me, and that's great. It's seen as, by you living your life differently, you are actively making my life uncomfortable. I think if we can remove that
Mm.
and say, you can be comfortable and happy while being next to someone who is living life differently than you.
Yeah. So I think you discovered your new mission. We'll get together.
We'll see about that.
Yeah. Ending the them versus us, the war.
Yes. Moving into politics. That's my.
So I mean,
don't think that will happen. That's not a desire of mine. That is not a dream of mine.
Well, you never know. You can, you have to dream bigger, I think.
True.
Let's see what comes up. Thank you so much for meeting with me today. It's been great to have you on the show again, and it's been great to delve into your mind. What's next for you? What is next for you?
So next is continuing to record the podcast. We're in the first year, and so we just passed, I think, almost 100 episodes at this point. So we do at least already? 2 episodes a week. Yeah, we do. Yeah, we do at least 2 episodes a week. So it's a lot. I've been busy. So we do a wide release episode, and then there's a membership site called Letting It Settle Plus, where there's 30-minute meditations, 5-minute meditations, 10-minute meditations that are released every week. Wow. And so there's a lot of content out there.
You are
so continuing to do that. I am. I always say no person should ever have to listen to themselves or look at themselves as much as I am forced to, but it's okay. So doing the podcast, and then September, the books will be released. So I have a book called Let It Settle, which is being released worldwide. And then there's a corresponding guided journal that goes along with that, which is being released at the same time. So doing that. And then some other, we're building courses. Those are coming out in the end of the year. So those will be released. I'm going over to Spain to film those. So
you're filming in Spain?
All sorts of fun things. I am in Madrid. I'm going. They're doing their company in Spain called Domestica is recording 2 courses. One's going to be an introduction to meditation, and then another one's going to be a how-to on how to become an ethical life coach.
Wow,
which will be fun.
It's a beautiful city. Have an amazing time. Have an amazing time.
Yeah. That's what I'm most excited about. Is just being in Madrid, but. But it will also come with some good content, which will be released at the end of the year. So.
Amazing. Well, congratulations on an amazing new podcast. Well, I say new podcast, 100 episodes in already. That's amazing. And good luck with the book in September, and also filming in Madrid.
Thank you.
And I will come. I'm going to be on your podcast shortly, so this will be Yeah, so everyone listening, you have to listen to Michael's as well, because we're going to have a very deep dive into. From a different side of things, so it'd be an interesting conversation.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, it's been an absolute pleasure. And everyone listening, thank you so much for listening to the Mindset Change podcast with me, Paul Sheppard, and Michael Galyon, my guest. And please do check out the Let It Settle podcast. I know that I do really great meditations, and I am going to recommend, obviously, Michael's meditations too, because they are, top notch. So you can swap between the 2 podcasts. There's nothing wrong with that. And I'll look forward.
There's always room for both.
Absolutely. And I'll look forward to connecting with you all in the very next episode. Have an amazing, peaceful, and present day.